Okay, it is 7 o'clock. This is the Village of South Russell. This is a special council meeting. Today is Monday, January the 17th,
Tuesday.
20. Tuesday, January the 17th, 7 p.m. Since this is a special council meeting, we're only allowed to do one thing, and that's to talk about stormwater. So if you want to talk about taxes and roads, we can't do that tonight. Subbing for fiscal officer, our administrative assistant will take the roll call.
Berger.
Here.
Canton.
Here.
Kavanaugh.
Here.
Galicki.
Here.
Porter.
Here.
Bell. Absent.
Okay, the only person that said that they would definitely be here is Tim Geis. Tim,
Yes,
would you like to speak?
sure, just briefly.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for doing this stormwater project.
Tim,
Where are you from?
what do you think? We need your name and address. That's, I forget to do that. So,
Tim Geis, 48 Ridgecrest, South Russell.
that's good.
I just want to thank the village for doing this stormwater project. I think it's a good idea, it's great. For Lake Louise, where I live, I know, I have a friend who grew up there. And he said when he was young, the lake was crystal clear. You could see to the bottom. That was, I'm guessing, 30, 35 years ago. So it's never been that way since I've lived there, which is 8 or 9 years now. And I assume it's because of construction upstream, which has caused more runoff into the lake. So it would be a great benefit to our lake, to the 63 households there, if we could reduce or slow down the storm runoff into the lake. So our lake is always cloudy. It has a fair amount of silt in it, always. I've actually seen kids wading in the lake and they come out, their legs are brown. I don't know for sure what that is, but parents were concerned, and I assured them that I didn't think it was harmful, that it was, some natural substance. But I don't have any, I'm not an engineer, I don't know, what would be the solution to that. I would assume a retention pond somewhere. We have a retention pond right next to our lake. And I was told by one of our homeowner board members that a consultant told us that it should be enlarged. So that would maybe one possibility, to simply enlarge the retention pond. We already have. That's really all I have to say. I've heard other, I live on Ridgecrest. I don't really have a problem with water coming into my house. We did when we first moved in. We put some drainage in the backyard. It seems to have solved it. But I've heard other residents along Ridgecrest get flooding when it rains. I don't see anybody here to testify to that. But that's all I have. It'd be great for our residents if something can be done to reduce or slow down the storm runoff.
Okay.
That's it. That's all I have.
We will adjust the formats. We'll take comments now. We'll do our presentation. Then we'll take comments again. You may want to know what we're doing and you may see things. So you'll have a chance now, in probably about a half hour to ask future comments. So don't feel you have to ask questions now. But this is the visitor section. So does anybody else have something they want to say or ask about? Okay. If you haven't signed in, please do so with your name and address. I don't know, sign out sheet is someplace, and we'll go through this. We do this about every other year. So the last stormwater update we did was in 2021. What we'll do today is going to split this into sections. Basically look at Sunridge. Sunridge is obviously appropriately named because it's one of the highest areas. Water from Sunridge, most of it goes to Lake Louise, which goes to Paw Paw, and eventually becomes all of the Silver Lake. The Family Life Center, we're going to hook together and talk about that with a lantern and Chagrin Lakes. We'll talk about the water coming from the other side of Sunridge through Kensington, through South Russell, the Central Retention Basin, and Parkland. Councilmember Berger will be handling the Central Retention Basin. And then we'll talk about the Red Barn and all of this over to what we did in Manor Brook, where Councilman Porter Porter and Berger are members of the Public Utilities Commission, and they're becoming the experts on stormwater, whether they like it or not. Then we'll finally talk about what we did in the park, what's happening at Country Estates and the Alderwood area. Okay. Basically, this Sunridge is here in the pink. Water flows down south and flows east. Most of it goes right here into Lake Louise. And when it's storming, they just spent quite a bit of money redoing their retention pond. Joe, you have a fountain also, I believe, in the retention pond. I think, or Tim, you have a fountain in the
Aerators?
aerator. Okay.
Yeah, we have, I think that we have 3.
Well, we have 6 stones in the lake and we have an aerator that puts water up in the retention pond. They kill bacteria down in the walls.
One of the issues, when Kevin mentions the bacteria, Sunridge is on septic systems. So, ideally, everybody's septic system works properly, and the water that comes into Lake Louise is all nice and clean, but that's not the case. The water comes into Lake Louise, and then it's going to flows out of here. There's a big spillway, and it joins the water. It comes here from Ashley. Ashley comes across. We also have water coming up here from the bottom from Bainbridge. This is all a part of the Silver Creek area. And this is the big hill now. You're at the valley of the big hill. It goes under Bellwood into Pawpaw. I have a map of Pawpaw's up front here. Pawpaw was built in the 1920s. And then there's another large spillway. When I mentioned these spillways, these are all homeowners associations have to finance these things. And these are huge. From there, water goes up through Silver Creek, through Russell, and eventually it will turn and eventually goes to Lake Erie. So that's the first area that we're going to deal with. Water also is going to come down south here, runs through the Family Life Center, and then comes back to us. Right, this is this orange, that's the lantern. This was a bridge we put in the past couple of years. It cost us about $300,000, and all their water goes out of here through the spillway. And this is all private. The bridge belonged to the village. Everything else done in Lake Louise is all privately paid for. When the water gets to the Family Life Center, it's on Bainbridge property, and they have a retention basin, but the retention basin didn't work. And the street commissioner and the crew, we put in a pipe a few years ago to hold the water. When your drain is at the bottom of a retention basin, it doesn't do any good. So it's now been built so the water will fill up, hold there, and then eventually flow out. This fall, this is the retention basin when it's not functioning properly. A man is cleaning out the silt, and this we did this. We split the cost with the Family Life Center to get this retention basin. You can't see it when you drive down Chillicothe, but it's right at the corner. And those of you who lived here for years, this would have been just like in Joe Chismore's yard. So the water goes in through here, and then it comes back to us. And that's where the problem occurs, because when it comes back, pardon me, this is a device we put in there, and it cost us about $1,000, but our guys developed it, and it's worked well to hold the water. But still, you have an issue. This is looking out to the exit road of the Lantern onto Shearbrook. This was the storm in 2019. So by cleaning out the Family Life Center's retention pond, we hopefully will be able to keep the water there and slowly release it. Because you just can't have a state highway being shut down because of water. But that's the water that comes out and loops around. It starts at Sunridge, twirls around, comes back, it flows south, it flows north. Now, the other area, water coming from the other side of Shearbrook, pardon me, the other side of Sunridge, flows into Kennington Green. This is Annandale. This is in one of those big storms. Most of the Kensington Green water is channeled underground through pipes, but this is when the groundwater gets, it's one of those 2 or 3 inches in an hour. It goes into the Kensington Green Pond, which built in the 1980s was completely up to code. It should be about a third larger if it had to be built to code now. But this is where most of the water from Kensington comes, and then it's right behind us. So we're now right through here. Pardon me, Bullfrog Pond is here, the water's coming. So some of this water has come down here, going down through here, and flows out this way. Some of the water just flows right across here. When it hits the village, right behind us, that's when we have an issue. Goes through Kensington Spillway again. This probably should have been double in size. And this is the water you see just south of Village Hall. In 2020, we put in a 319 grant. We spent about 37,000 of our money and about 37,000 of the state's money. We put in 4 little retention ponds, and they do a good job, but it was not enough. The water still can overflow and shuts down 306. It runs just south of Sal's and the dental office there. They have, the dental office on a bad storm will give 1 to 2 inches of water right through his place. The people at the dental office have seen fish floating in the creek. The fish came from Kensington and they flowed into the ditch, which is right by their dental office. So this, all these plants here were everything that we put in. We hope to catch all this water. To give you an idea, this is the salt dome, and we are sitting right here right now. So the water comes through here, and we put in this area. So again, about $90,000 was spent here, and it does a good job, but it's not enough. So it's going to come across the street. So this is the Central Retention Basin. Councilman Berger has been on the Public Utilities Committee for a couple of years. He's going to do some facts about the retention basin, why it's there, what we hope it will do.
Well, simply, the retention basin is there to catch the water coming out of Bullfrog Pond, okay, coming down from Kensington. And the idea was built with a 500-year storm level in mind, okay? So it's, does that mean it will overflow? No, it means that it's built with that expectation that should we have a significant amount of rainfall, that we will catch the water there and hold it and slowly release it across 306. And from there, it will then run to Chagrin Lakes, to their swim pond, and then down to the lake, Parkland Dam. Thank you. Okay, so the basin is there. What hasn't been done is the change in the culvert pipe under 306, and that's coming next year, well, this year, with the better weather. So that hasn't been done. But in the few storms that we have seen, since this has been done this past summer, is it working? Yeah, we're getting some water in it. Okay, not a lot, but we haven't had a major storm. But it is doing its job, and that will hopefully resolve any issues with water overflowing 306. It also slows down the water flow into Chagrin Lakes, which then reduces pressure both on the swim lake and on Parkland Dam in terms of all the water that they've been getting. So simply, we're catching the water higher up the hill, if you will, from this perspective, and holding it and slowly releasing it. And that's been pretty much the game plan for our stormwater issues. And that's all I had to say about it.
Okay. We, every so often, in 2004, we did a master stormwater study through CT Consultants, or engineering firm. In 2018, we looked at what we call the north area over here. In 2021, we did another update of the master. Basically, the difference between the 2004 and the 2021 is obviously everything that needed to be done is larger and much more expensive. But I got to give CT credit. What they said in 2004 has pretty much come true now in 2023. So we've been happy with them, and they designed this and it's worked well. They've also, just for part of information, they've advised us, don't do any landscaping yet. Just let everything settle for a year or two. Personally, I don't like looking at it already, but that's been their advice, and that's what we'll do, is just wait and see how everything settles in and works. But it's been nice, honestly, to see water standing in there. Okay, when the water eventually goes under, right behind us, goes under Chillicothe, goes past the dentist, hits the Chagrin Lakes, it goes to the Chagrin Lakes Dam, which is between Royal Oak, Maple Springs, and Parkland in Chagrin Lakes. Now, the problem here is this is an earthen dam. They had it inspected, or pardon me, hired an engineer. They did all this on their own. And the engineer said something like $400,000 to fix it. This is a private lake. If you live on this lake, there are 11 people, so the bill hits them. So we have worked with the county auditor, Chuck Balder, with Bainbridge and Russell, to create something called an ESID, Erosion Special Improvement District, where those 11 people can work together and raise the money to fix their dam. Now, since that $400,000 shocker hit, and people are thinking, okay, that's about $2,000 a year increase in my property tax for 20 years, they've looked at different solutions and at different engineers. It could be down to $100,000, but it's a private situation. Even their homeowners association cannot help on this issue. Our lakes are nice, but they weren't made to hold back the water. They're God made for the water to keep going. This is one of the prettiest spots in the village. And these people, as I said, have already created their ESID, and they're well on their way to getting something done to stop this problem. One gentleman's losing about 8 feet of his backyard. It gets washed away. And you can see this is a little bit different shot of the dam and what it has there, and which I never knew. You're not supposed to. I always thought you had trees on the backside. That was good. No, that's bad because the roots go in towards the water, and that's where the water would eventually break down your dam. So we'll have to clean out all the vegetation on the backside. But again, we've worked with them, but we can't really do anything for them. You're talking private property. Those 11 homeowners have that issue. Now, jumping back from here, the red barn, every drop of water that flows onto the red barn heads north, goes down, and then it eventually turns and goes west under 306. This is the house that's on the east side of 306 across from Manor Brook. And this is one of those century storms that hits from time to time. The water goes into Manor Brook, and this is a stream that was there in 2021. It's been there for a while. Somebody did a very nice job when they put in Manor Brook. They put in 3 24-inch culverts. So when the water gets to the Manor Brook, it goes right through. But what we're trying to do is what we've just created at Manor Brook, and Councilman Porter has also been on the park committee, and he's been here a long time. Pardon me. He's on the public utilities. He'll talk about Manor Brook and what we're doing there.
Well, as people may have seen, there was a significant amount of work done over on the Manor Brook driveway side of the village. Initially, we thought it would be a 2-phase program, at least a single-phase program. The area north of Manor Brook Drive and the area south of Manor Brook Drive would be used to create a floodplain, one north, one south of Manor Brook. Whitetail Community owned the north parcel of land, and Manor Brook Gardens owns the south portion of the land. At the time, folks at Manor Brook Gardens weren't enthusiastic about turning that into a floodplain. Whitetail people were, because they had seen more significant flooding than Manor Brook did. So the village decided to split the program into two. So phase one is the north part of the project, and that is almost complete. The south part, we'll see if we actually need it going forward. We may or may not, but time will tell. So the last step that what we did was we widened out the stream floodplain on the western side of 306. And what that does is it allows the water that's rushing from the east side, northeast quadrant of the village, to take a lot more time to get down through Manor Brook. Okay? The last part of the project, which will be done in the spring, Planning Commission just approved the landscaping plan for that north section. There will be 15 trees planted within the easement. 5 of them will be 12-foot trees, 10 of them will be 8-foot trees. So that should replace the screening that the Manor Brook folks were used to prior to the project, and should grow nicely over the next several years. We think phase 2 will be necessary, but that will be a subject of negotiations with Manor Brook Gardens, and that'll give us time to evaluate whether the floodplain phase 1 actually worked. In consequence of that, I think Chris alluded to it earlier, there are 4 culverts, 2 south of Bell 306, 2 north, that are conduits for water flow from the eastern side of the village to the western. And the ditch that runs along 306 on the eastern side has been part of the problem, in that the culverts are undersized at present. When they were installed, they were fine, but as everybody has noticed over the last several years, we're getting a lot less snow and a lot more rain. And because of that, we're getting a lot more water flow from the eastern side of the village to the west. So the engineers have prepared bid specs for the village, and the project to replace all 4 of those culverts will be bid out at the end of January. We expect the work to be done before school starts in August. And I'll warn you now, it's going to be a big pain in the neck, because all of these culverts run under 306. And when you try to replace the culverts, it's not like you can just pull them out from underground and slide the new ones in. I wish it were that easy. They're going to have to be excavated, which is going to cause a fair amount of disruption traffic-wise on 306. Okay? The police department is going to, along with Streets Department, is going to manage that as best they can. But in order to upsize those pipes, we have to put them in the hard way, which is digging through the road surface. And once they're in, that will mean the water from the east side will have a much bigger inlet and outlet to get to the west side. So we did phase 1, Manor Brook, the central retention basin first, so that when the culvert pipes are replaced, it's not going to flood out the people on the west side of the village. Okay? And if phase 2 happens, then it's just extra insurance at this point, we think, for the village stormwater situation. But as the mayor mentioned, all of these projects come with hefty price tags. We have yet to find an inexpensive solution to stormwater problems. Phase 1, Manor Brook, cost about $460,000. We got a grant from the federal government, and CT is the entity that got the grant for us, that paid about $268,000 of that cost. So to the taxpayers of South Russell, that portion of the project that fixes, we think, stormwater in the northeast and northwest quadrants of the village costs about $186,000, which is way less than we would have spent if we had gone it alone. And as far as that's concerned, the 319 grant was a big help on the central retention basin as well. The federal government paid, and the state of Ohio paid part of that too, right? Yeah, or maybe most of it.
Which one, the central retention?
Yeah.
ARPA.
Yeah, and ARPA funds were used as well. So from that point of view, the burden on the taxpayer is a lot less than it might have been otherwise. But at this point, we're hoping that the engineers are correct, that 100-year, 500-year storms will not flood people out. And I heard someone say, I think it's Councilman Burton, we bought the umbrella and now we're waiting for the rain. And so we'll be prepared. So we're thinking we're on track, and the recommendations that were made in 2004 and repeated in 21, we only have a couple more to go. Phase 2 of Manabrook's one of them. So I think that's what I have for citizens.
Mark, just for the audience's information, where does the water flow from Manor Brook? Where does it go after going to the Manor Brook?
Can you bring that up? Bill?
Yeah.
Please.
That's coming.
Okay.
That's too far, I think.
Yeah,
That's where it ends up.
Yeah, this is the,
Yeah, by Gurney.
by Gurney, yeah. In fact, the Fox Run Bridge, you can't go across it now. It's been eroded, a couple of lakes have been eroded away. Okay, I'm gonna go back a little bit, okay?
Where does it go after Fox Run? It goes through Fox Run.
Goes to Sugar Bush.
Does it catch that other basin you were showing earlier?
No,
No,
Those are
that's
two
right over
separate.
here.
And where do those two end up? The pond you showed earlier?
The retention basin, the one out here?
Yeah.
Okay, so it crosses 306, goes through Schwinn Lakes, goes to the Parkland Dam, and then further down empties into what is open land at this point, further
And
to the.
what about the Manabrook one? It goes through Fox Run?
It goes through Fox Run, and then it crosses over to Sugar Bush.
And then to
Chelsea Court.
Chelsea Court, and
and down,
then down into Bainbridge, right,
Yeah.
okay.
Eventually gets to McFarland Creek.
Yes,
So they all end up getting in Fire Creek, both of them?
eventually, yes. The question is, whose basements do they end up in before they get to McFarland Creek? And how do we avoid that happening?
So none of the water then from Sugarbush, it's going behind Chelsea, not exactly sure how that happens.
yes,
Right.
goes right between.
So it goes behind everything, right, and then into that little river there.
Right.
behind Chelsea.
Correct.
So none of it goes to the water that feeds south.
No,
That's all I'm interested in.
correct. It's not. You are right here. Your water comes out this way.
Right.
Southwood comes down here, Chelsea comes down here, and basically they kind of join, like right into there.
Yeah, way,
Yeah,
way
it's
far
fast.
downstream, yeah. Because I know the water, and look, it's not really a huge issue here, but just informational, right? There's a bridge that you could walk from Southwick, where that common area is, all the way into the, what's it called? What's the big road that goes,
East Washington.
country states, not country states, Sherwood.
Sherwood, yeah,
All the
Sherwood,
way at the bottom of that, there's a little bridge that goes across there,
right there.
and you can't cross it anymore. I mean, that, it's eroded as well. I mean, kids do, but it's not terribly.
Some of you may recall Chelsea Court was done about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like much when you drive by, but it certainly controlled a lot of the flooding in that area. That was a $500,000 block of concrete to put that in and make that happen. And
Well, that's made a huge difference on, Chelsea used to look like the picture I saw before, right where the land, all, off.
It became a point where the village bit the bullet, spent the money, and that was all out of our pocket. We didn't have any grants, any help on that one. These two projects we just talked about, the federal government and state government helped considerably with those.
I'm
I
gonna,
have another question if I can. The two projects we talked about, the central
Retention basin.
and the Manabrook one, both run separate but end up somewhere way down the road. From those retentions, the ones that were, the two recent ones that were just built, is that the last retention before they get all the way to the end? Is it all creek all the way to the end? Or is there any other retention anywhere in that project?
I'll show you. Basically, again, we'll go, this is Sunridge and the water's coming this way. Water goes into Bullfrog Pond, comes out here right behind us, goes out to, on the big storm, it's right here. This is the central retention basin. Chillicothe, think of Chillicothe as a dam, and it just stops all the water. Once it gets through here, it crosses and goes right in. The blue lake that I'm kind of on top of now, that's the Chagrin Lakes swim lake. The water flows just to the north of it. But when it hits, this is the Parkland Dam that I showed you. When it hits this lake, it hits it perpendicular, coming right at it. After it goes through Parkland, it wiggles in behind Chelsea Court and comes down like this and heads down to Bainbridge.
And there's no retention anywhere past that. Those ponds that you're talking about, they just flow through. That's not retention.
No, this one slows it down quite a bit, and that's part of the problem.
Parkland.
The Parkland Dam, it's wearing out. Because all the water that comes from Sunridge through Kensington's Bullfrog Pond through here stops at this Parkland Dam.
Mayor, did you want to mention the ESID that Parkland's doing?
This is the ESID, this is a group of 11 people that we're looking at, again, maybe 400,000, we don't know. But that's what they're going to do to rebuild this dam.
The audience may not know what an ESID is.
Oh, ESID is an erosion special improvement district.
It's run by the county. And basically, what you can do is you can get a bunch of homeowners or continuous property owners together. You can apply to the county for this program. And essentially what it does is the homeowners make the fix to the property for erosion control, and they can put the amount, they pay it, and then the county reimburses and puts it on their taxes for 20 years. So if you're living in one of these homes and this process is complete, and you move in 5 years, you're done, the new homeowner picks up the payments. Sort of like putting it in a sewer line near your house. The next person picks it up and it's on the tax deed. So the Special Erosion Improvement District is a great program to help with erosion. Country Estates has a pending petition, Parkland's petition has been submitted. So for the gentleman who talked about Lake Louise, that's an idea too. Because whatever the cost is, if the project's approved, for your problem, it's split between 64 homeowners, and it's paid sequentially. It's like a zero interest loan, or there's like a 1% fee or something like that over 20 years.
If enlarging our retention pond would solve the problem, is that what you're saying?
Particularly if it solves an erosion problem.
Yeah, because we wouldn't have any authority to do anything upstream.
No.
So let's do a little summary here. Water going this way, Lake Louise and Pawpaw, their issues, they get hit with the silt coming from Sunridge to Lake Louise to Pawpaw. And then the water goes and it goes away from us. The water coming this way, again, goes through Bullfrog Pond, through the Chagrin Lakes, through Parkland, and then it sneaks out here just around the end of Shearbrook and goes south. The water coming up here, this is all Bell Meadow. Bell Meadow is this huge loop. All that water comes across here under Chillicothe. There's a 48-inch culvert, and this is where it starts. Chillicothe backs up this water for these people that live along here. Now this line that you see here, you can see it straight. This was an older zoning map, and that's what we have changed. We've turned all this area into the Manor Brook 319 grant, and I'll work our way back to that so we can see it. Sure I will.
And you're saying ultimately that water is following the same path because it goes to Fox Run, then Sugar Bush, and then it connects up behind Chelsea.
Yep.
The water from Sunridge, and then this water that we're referring to is behind Chelsea.
Correct.
Yes.
So what's the criteria for phase two? I live in Fox Run.
Oh.
What's the criteria for phase phase two of this, like how would you measure, what would be your acceptance criteria if you need to enact phase two? Is there a, you measure the rate of the water? Is there, how do you guys know that you need to do that?
Even our engineer wouldn't know. But CT, they have water engineers, they would be able to tell us. Right now, I think what we want to see is the amount of flow that's going to be coming under Manor Brook. See, we took this line here, which you see, this line, and it's been wiggled, and it goes all over the place here, and it's created this floodplain. So ideally, when the water gets here, going under Manor Brook, that's the 3 24-inch culverts. It's not going to be any faster or any stronger than what it was.
Are those culverts being replaced?
No, no need to.
Just the,
Not the three he's talking about.
Not these three.
Just
One's
on
a
Chase.
Chillicothe,
Yeah.
yes.
So we want to dump this water into here and just let it sit for about 6 to 8 hours. And then it slowly is coming underneath here. It could be a couple of years, frankly. I don't know, but I think the test will probably be, okay, when we have a 100-year storm, did it do its job? Or did these people down here get hit?
because once it hits Fox Run, it hits a series of 1, 2, 3 separate culverts that
Yes.
are within Fox Run. And luckily they made them, I think, 4 feet by 6 feet, the culverts overall. But my house is the first one that hits and it's in front of my house. So it will literally back up and then turns into a 40-foot wide retention pond in front of my house instead of having it upstream, right? So wiggling it through, I mean, time will tell, of course,
Yeah.
but, you know, for phase two, there is no acceptance criteria, right?
Well,
No.
please also understand that phase two, that property is owned by Manor Brook Gardens. So in order for the village to be able to implement phase two, there has to be a negotiated easement with the private property owners, okay? And, you know, while we would hope that they would eventually decide that they want to participate, there's nothing requiring them to do so.
Right, before the fact that they said no, we can.
We would have, yes, we would have gone forward with that and done it at the same time.
Mayor, can you, or Mark, where are the 3 culverts that are gonna be replaced?
Right here.
Oh, no, that are gonna be replaced around Chillicothe.
There's 4 of them.
4.
2 north of 306 and Bell, 2 south. The mayor's cursor's, no.
Yeah, he's on
No.
Middlebrook.
I thought
Basically,
there was just one north of, Bell.
it's 2. Ralph
Which
Richards
other
house.
The furthest one on Manor Brook isn't being replaced, correct? That
No,
one's
it is.
staying. It's the one that's just past Manor Brook Drive is getting the large, that's one. Where's
There's
the other?
one, there's the second one further north. Then
But I thought that further north one was not getting replaced.
there are 4 getting replaced, and I believe it's all, the one you're talking about, plus the one right across from Manor Brook. Is that right?
Correct, just north of Manor Brook is the first one,
Yeah.
at Bell Road is the second one.
Yeah.
So down here.
Yeah,
Sorry, that was the south.
No,
South.
yes, yes.
The 4-foot, 48-inch one's gonna stay the way it is.
It's right here. This is the Manor Brook one. It's at the hill we've been talking about with the, and then there's another one gonna be right here at the gas station, because we're
Okay.
redoing that. Then there's gonna be this one just south of Village Hall. And then there's the one down by the Lantern right here.
So anything on the north side of the belt is flowing into the creek there, correct? And it goes
Yeah.
through the-
North side, yeah. All this water comes here and it comes all the way around like this. It does a complete 180. Start there again. It drops, lands on the red barn, it comes out and then turns and it comes right back down this way.
Then it goes back across
Yes,
again
yeah, and it comes,
on the other side of 306.
no,
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 it doesn't do it.
it doesn't move.
It just
It
goes
goes
south.
like this, yeah.
it's not
Right around.
across the bell.
Yeah, so the furthest one north is not getting replaced.
Correct.
You're talking about the one at the village line?
Pardon?
The one at the village, close to the village line?
No, this is 48 inches. This one, where that blue line is.
That
No,
far one where he's at there, that's not getting replaced.
correct, it's not gonna be
One,
replaced.
the 2 south of there then are, where does the one by the gas station go to? Does that go into a pond or right into
That's,
that?
that's,
500?
I bel- isn't most of that for the new traffic signal?
It drains along the ditch, past the Bell station, in a pipe, And then when it gets past the Bell Station, it opens up into an open ditch, and it goes down towards.
Catches that Fox Run spot and goes across there. Right. So increasing the flow, like you're gonna do in both, when you replace the culverts on either the north side or the south side of the belt, it's gonna increase the flow. Excuse me, of water naturally. Excuse me, the house, the red house that you showed is acting as a retention pond at this point, your property, right?
The red house I showed his backyard, it's about, pardon me, it's about right in here.
So what are the mitigations, like if we open this up and then we see serious erosion at Fox Run? And as it makes its way down, like, what if there is no phase two at this point in time without a negotiation? Would the CT consultants come in and analyze the flow rate of the water? What would be the next step of mitigating action for that?
I think the next step, if phase one is not enough, then they would come in and say, you need to get through phase two. Because the people in Fox Run mainly keep that water in their yards and in their ditch. When it crosses here, then it basically is in the homes. It's in their basements, the way the things are designed there. So yeah, we have, people, a lot of people support you and say, hey, get in phase two as soon as we see if phase one doesn't do the job. But again, I think I don't know, as an engineer, do they wait and see if the 100-year storm, does it hold it? I mean, we got a ton of money and a lot of work into taking this floodplain, so.
Well, I think I'm a little confused here on exactly how you're gonna slow that water down, because the whole purpose of all of these projects is to slow the water down going downstream.
Mhm.
So we've talked a little bit about you're putting larger culverts in, which means you're gonna get it off the east side of the road, which is flooding, bring it to the west side to where you just put these retention ponds in. Well, actually, they're not retention ponds, they're floodplains. At least one's a retention pond, one's a floodplain. Big difference between those two, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So in the Manor Brook floodplain there, you're not changing the upper one, but you're changing the south one. You're gonna enlarge that because you need to get the water off the east side quicker, and you wanna hold it on the west side and then release it.
Yes.
And the design, from what I was to understand, was that in doing that, you are not changing the flow downstream to these folks. That was the whole idea of it. And now I want to know, how are you doing that? Because we were always told that the purpose of this was to hold the water over there, let it release slower, so that you get it off one side onto the other side, and then release it down, but you're not releasing it any quicker down to Fox Run than it currently is going now.
Yes.
But you're also not going to release it slower, so he's still gonna have the flooding problem he has downstream in a heavy rain. Is that not correct?
I don't know that it is, because we don't know how the floodplain is going to act quite yet. It may actually slow the water, but we don't know. It's designed to take the increase in water flow from the culvert replacement project and not make anything worse. Well, it probably won't make anything better, but we don't know that quite yet.
So how are you gonna hold in, the floodplain is not a retention pond, so it's not designed to hold water. We've been told that the worst case scenario would be to hold water for 8 to 12 hours.
Yes.
That kind of thing. So how are you gonna get it to, quotes, back up in there to hold? There was talk about a temporary check dam.
Mhm.
Is that check dam in currently or not?
It's just a bunch of boulders, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, well, there's a check dam, supposed to be, in the original design, there was supposed to be a temporary check dam to, while everything was being built. I don't know if that's in there. Somebody told me it wasn't in there because they didn't do the new culvert yet. When the new culvert comes in, they're gonna put a check dam in there to slow the water temporarily until they, I'm not sure why temporarily, but we were told that the check dam would not be permanent. And it's kind of critical to, my thought is that the check dam isn't gonna be permanent. So how are we gonna slow, what's the thought process on slowing that water down to use that flow?
Instead of the water
Because I
coming,
know there's laws and stuff in there and there's boulders in the creek to do that.
Instead of the water coming in here and going, pardon me, just coming in here and going straight. The water gonna go up here, it's gonna go up here, it's gonna go here, it's gonna go here. The same amount of water is eventually going through these 3 24-inch culverts.
But it's gonna take longer
It's
to
gonna
get
take
there.
longer to, yes.
Just because of the meandering creek.
Yeah.
You've got
More-
logs.
You've got a more circuitous route, and the stones or riprap also impacts the speed of the water.
Temporary slow down, so temporary flood that area instead of flooding the area on the east side.
Right.
Yep.
And remember, the sides are graded. So instead of having a stream, which is like rectangular, it spreads out. So it takes a bigger volume.
It's like three.
Yeah.
It's like skiing straight down the hill as opposed to swirling like this.
Switchbacks.
It takes long.
So there's no restrictive plug or anything on any of the culverts, correct?
Correct.
Because I thought when we originally talked about this a couple of years ago, there was going to be some kind of restrictive plug to see how it acted first. And then as the flow increased, you could increase, the flow a bit, but you're just opening up and we can see. It's kind of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how many more times of water will that be able to hold than it was holding when it just had the creek? Is it 5
I've got
times, 10 times?
Couple feet of charts over there that I mean, their engineers have gone through and figured out how much water that's gonna hold. I can dig that out for you. I don't know off the top of my head.
There was talk about putting a restrictor on that new culvert,
Mhm.
but first one south, just in case it let water go down too quick. Is that still in the plans?
Don't know yet.
I don't recall that.
One of our problems, the engineer had a medical issue, and he should be here tonight, and he can't, and it was serious, so we're sort of at a disadvantage.
I know there was talk about that, so I'm sure it'll get in the end result, because there was a big concern of if we dump it too fast and it ends up going down Fox Run too quick, we've made the situation worse, which everybody's agreed that the worst that's gonna happen is gonna be the same as it is now.
Yeah, no, we realize there's a lot of people like Fox Run, Sugar Bush that are
Because
concerned.
remember, we get a 1,000-year storm, all bets are off.
All right,
Because that exceeds the design
I'm
capacity.
going to proceed on to talk a little bit about phase 2. Again, this was the original stream, just straight through out. Ideally, when it comes under Manor Brook, this is Manor Brook, it will be in this floodplain, and it'll come out and eventually flow this way. Now, comment on this construction here and on the central retention basin. Out of all the trees that we took out, there was one tree of value that was taken to a lumber mill. It was a white oak. So most of these trees were just scrapped. So when you think of all the trees in the Mother Nature that was torn out, there wasn't much. The rest of it went to firewood, but one good tree was salvaged. I'm gonna move on now. This is basic, well, this was a similar situation. This is up in Madison. So we went up and took a look at this. This is at the Madison Cemetery. And again, you can just see how they're gonna wiggle and use the stones to slow the water versus having it flow straight through. And we talked
Are all the
about,
stones in place in the Mangrove one?
yes,
On the
Yeah.
sides or just blocks? I just saw where they run perpendicular and not with the stream, right? So they cross the stream like this, I just saw.
I think the only thing left is some vegetation, some trees that have to be placed there yet. Okay, this was Fox Run, and we talked about that. One of the things we do with the state of Ohio and the Ohio EPA, this sensor, this little device is about this, it's about double this size. This hangs off the culvert on Bell Road, right by the Fox Run Bridge. And it measures stormwater here, and there's 55 of these, probably over 50 in Northeast Ohio. And this is how they're trying to monitor the stormwaters. And this would be one good indication of, did it work? Because this has been up for a year now, and it tells us about the stormwater. And then, when we get that 100-year flood, we're gonna be able to say how much increase of water occurred because of the 100-year flood. So this is one of the devices that we put on there about a year ago.
So is there any comparative measures that you do reconcile
No,
between
until
now
then,
and
no.
then?
Frankly, it's probably gonna be you and your neighbors saying, are things better or worse? Just comparison. This, now, once the water goes under Bell Road, right at Gurney, this is the Sugar Bush culvert. Now, Sugar Bush faces the same problem Parkland, it's a private street, so they have to pay for everything, and there's just 10 houses there. And like this is their, the one side of their culvert, which is getting pretty much eroded away. And this was a shot at the lady's basement when she had water, that was a culvert. We talked about Chelsea Court, this is what we did, Councilman Porter referred to it as $470,000 designed to catch the water after it comes all the way back. There all flows all the way around. One of the last things we did is in the park. This is behind the farmhouse in the barn on Bell Road, the old farmhouse. We put in a wetlands, again, cost us about $37,000. And we put in this wetlands to catch the water from the park, and it flows north into Country Estates. And there's 4 different lakes there at Country Estates. So we did our part in trying to catch this water and hold it as best we can. Okay, that's it. All right, now, that was kind of a quick tour through. Go back to the map, which is probably the best thing. I would ask you all to do me a favor. I was told, and I know this after many years, have you give your name and address. I did it once and I forgot. So we're just going to ask you, if you spoke, please let us know that we could, we'll try to connect. Somebody spoke, it's just for the record, just to say, hey, people spoke. Yes, sir. Name and address, so get back
Yes,
on
Mayor
track.
Kutz, I'm Jeff Greenleaf, I'm at 5249 Chillicothe. So if you look across the central retention basin, I'm the first house. One of the things that we've been talking about tonight, it's been referred to several times, is that Bullfrog Pond does all the work with the water coming from Kensington Green and then comes down into the central retention pond. I can assure everyone here, and you're welcome to come walk mine and my neighbor's property. It doesn't in any way, shape, or form cover all of that. We have had several trench lines. I don't want to exaggerate it, but they're probably 6 to 9 inches in depth. There used to be a handful. I did put up a berm about 3 years ago that blocked it and redirected that water to the low-lying areas behind Kensington Green that would flow into the central retention. But there's so much water washing through there that we're still left with 2 on my property, 1 on my neighbor's property, where the water is flowing. My neighbor, the Urason family, has had water in the basement. So one of the things that I've thrown out to Eric, your engineer, who unfortunately couldn't be here, is the possibility, I think Councilmember Berger brought up easements there. Could we dig a low-tech ditch behind Kensington Green and run it so we direct the water where we want it to go to that central retention basin so it's not flowing through our properties?
Yeah, I'll just say, makes sense to me, and we need to put it on Eric's agenda to take a look at it and tell us what it would take to do that. But that sounds like a fairly straightforward answer to a problem.
So, are you west of or east of?
I'm on the east side. I'm right across the field. You can see my house now with the central retention pond, but yeah, that's.
So you're on the same side as the central retention pond?
I'm right next door to it.
Jeff, frankly, I don't know if you know Matt Hoover, lives south of you.
Yes.
His backyard, yeah, we would, if this is something we would do, we'd probably run that almost to the lantern. Because his backyard is a quagmire also, just standing water.
My
That's,
guess
I don't know,
is-
it's a thought.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
My guess is everyone would probably favor that. There's so much water that comes, I guess, through Kensington, but also because of Kensington. And I think the best laid plans is just, we can't handle all of that. There's fairly routine, the stormwater coming through. Again, it can be a quarter inch, it could be a half inch. I think at worst, maybe 3/4 of an inch. You just can't use my yard. And that is a problem. You can see the erosion. I have a lot of trees in the back. The roots are exposed and it's getting worse. Worse yet, where I put up the berm, my neighbor on the backside in Kensington Green probably has, I'm guesstimating 10 to 12 fairly large trees that have just fallen over. All the trees are just drowning back in. So I would think that a ditch from the Lantern or Mr. Hoover's all the way to the new culvert there would serve everyone well.
It will come up on a public utilities committee.
Yep.
wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Right.
Address it.
Our next meeting is Friday, by the way. Public utilities,
Okay.
and we're hoping the engineer will be present, but nonetheless.
Other comments or questions?
So I have a couple more about the.
Okay, Brian Monroe,
100 Vanderbrook. So you talked about the culverts being replaced. I'll start the one at the central basin. So that one's being replaced. Is it being replaced, is going to be larger or smaller? Larger. What it is. So you're gonna take the water downstream into that creek faster than it's going down.
Well,
That's
no,
the opposite of what we want.
because of the central retention basin,
Pardon?
because of the central retention basin, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
So the engineering is upsizing the pipes to take the water faster, or more of it, I should say. The central retention basin is designed to slow it down. So the flow volume isn't as much as it is now.
Okay, so is the culvert after the retention basin on the creek side? So if the water's in the retention basin and you've built this, pipe coming up so that it'll retain water in there to a certain degree, the size of that pipe, is it gonna be larger going onto the street? Because if it's larger, it makes sense to me, it's gonna take more water out. I was curious as to why it wouldn't be smaller to restrict it,
If you wanted to slow the water down.
and then allow it to back up into the retention pond.
If you make it smaller, you're gonna flood the road.
Once you move it back into the retention pond, that's, I think the idea is it back into the retention pond.
Sure, but it
How are
has,
you gonna fill the retention pond?
the water hits the head wall and makes a left-hand turn. Some of it goes into the pipes, the rest goes into the central retention. If you make the pipe smaller, you will get more, but you risk flooding 306 again. And the whole idea of the central retention basin was to stop the flooding in 306 and help the people downstream, which it will.
So to divert some of that water, you've got some device before it gets to that culvert that's gonna send it back to that retention pond to hold it for a period of time and then release it.
Gravity, it's lower than where the pipes are.
Then where it goes across the street.
Yes.
Okay.
so that's what it's doing now.
That retention pond, how high would it get before it goes into its overflow? It looks like it's 8 to 10 feet deep now, but it looks like it's built up a little bit higher than the road.
There is a berm between the basin and the road. I think we had it 2 feet.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we ask the street commissioner, Tim, can you help us here?
Sure, there's gonna be a apparatus on the east side of the road that is gonna hold back the water. It's gonna allow so much water to go through the pipe, which is gonna be larger, but it won't be going full until the basin completely fills up, which is,
So some kind of dam, check dam, some setup to
yeah,
restrict.
yes, there's something
Before it
there
goes
to
across.
restrict, it's working now. In the heavy rains we've had so far, it's worked so far. There's been several feet of water in the retention basin.
But by enlarging the culvert, aren't you still gonna have the potential to send the water downstream quicker?
It will be held back.
Okay. So you're not gonna send it down quicker?
Correct.
No.
Until it fills up. Once it fills up, before it flows over the road, it'll go into the overflow, which will flow more water, but hopefully that won't happen in 500 years.
Any other questions or comments?
I got two more, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sure.
Same question on Manor Brook, with controlling, we talked about it a little bit, and I'm not sure I heard the right answer on the end there. The new culvert that's going in there, will it have a restriction on it or a way to restrict water if we determine the flow's coming too fast downstream? And
I don't think it's
when I
been
think,
installed with one.
pardon?
It's not being installed with one, but I think we could put one in if we needed to.
Okay. I heard something about that, I just didn't know how that was gonna work.
The whole point is move the water east to west, and if you restrict the flow, it stays more on the east side.
Correct. The only reason you would restrict it is if it's going downstream too fast.
Correct. But we think the floodplain is gonna take care of that problem. We have a question for Fox Run though.
I was looking at your map, sorry. Yeah, I mean, mine's the restrictor plate and was the criteria to look at that. If that flow meter's downstream, there needs to be some type of benchmark at some point in time to say, hey, this is going faster than it was at a certain period of time per, you know, you say inches of rain per hour is basically what the measure, whether it's low or high. And you could match that and say, hey, the flow is going, we are getting more volume and the flow rate is increasing, but we would need some type of benchmark and shared on occasion with, you know, the residents there, just to understand that, because that would be that criteria, say, okay, maybe we need a restrictor plate, or phase 2, we need to do more negotiating or something to tell us if it's going, if the flow rate is increased and the volume is increased. Those are the two biggest concerns we have. If we're not changing the 24-inch pipes that go under, the 3 that go under Manor Brook, theoretically, it should, unless it flows over top of Manor Brook, and then that's a whole different problem. We would like to see some type of measurement that's shared with our HOA, so we can monitor it quarterly or, you know, every half year or something like that, just to understand.
I think the real key will probably be you, maybe Chris Smith, your homeowner association president, street commissioner, engineer, and it's probably just gonna be visual. You're getting a lot more water, there's a lot more erosion, we gotta do something. Or, hey, this is working. That's frankly kind of how we operate. We can do all the studies, but
Where
I think
does this data go from what you're putting on the belt?
it comes to us every month. Pardon me, it goes to the Chagrin River Watershed Partners, and they have that.
Okay. So we could apply to them to have that shared with us.
Yes, that'd be a public record.
At the measurement point, but not necessarily.
Oh, yeah.
I can find out the high, yeah, it's called the high flow. Give me some time
It's
to
gonna be a current.
get it to you.
But it'd have to be measured against the the amount of rain that was received in a particular time period as well. Okay.
As a note on that, Fox Run could help stormwater in the village as well. There's been talk over the years about a retention pond where your gazebo is now.
Yeah.
On that little tiny,
What nobody inhabits.
yes, but, and this is gonna come up Friday's meeting, if Fox Run were amenable to granting an easement to dig a detention pond, the people on the Sugar Bush side and elsewhere would thank you for it.
Okay.
This is a village-wide problem in a village-wide
When
solution.
you attended our HOA, we missed that one. We didn't talk about that piece. I know it's a controversial topic.
Yes,
Sure it is.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't matter to me personally.
The only thing we really haven't spent a lot of time on is the silt issue. As we did spend a little bit about that. Papa Lake Louise, Bellwood has they have a really tough situation. And I know in Southwick, I think at one end of your lake, it's about 4 inches deep.
It's not, maybe a fuzz deeper than that, but not much.
Not much. There really isn't a solution that we have right now is to handle all the silt that's coming, filling up your lakes. It falls onto the homeowners associations. So I don't have a solution to that, and I don't know.
So that'll second my comment, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Heidi Baumgart, I'm at 95 Papa Beach Bed. Obviously, I mean 95 Papa Lake, but we are the beach bed of about a third of South Russell, and we haven't really covered it at all in this meeting. We've talked a lot about everything east of 306. I was looking at elevations, you're at about 1,200 feet, and it all flows down to the 1,100 feet on the west side of 306, which is where we spend a lot of our time. If you look at elevations towards Papa Lake, Silver Springs, Maple Hill, even part of Lake Louise, those are all in the 1,200 or high 1,100 feet down into Papa, which is, again, I'm using an online tool, 1,100 feet. And it's the same things are happening with Papa, where everything east of us is flowing west, or everything south of us is flowing south through Papa. That is essentially the silt bed lake now, that serves as the retention pond as well, whatever language you want to use, that then filters, slows down all the water, and all the silt sits in our lake, and then goes up into the Silver Spring. So, Papa, with our 42 homes, which, whenever I address council, somebody likes to conveniently point out we're private, so I'll just do that for you, that yeah, we're private, but from my estimate, 387 homes, something like 30% of South Russell is probably affecting our lake. And essentially after the Dominion gas work, which I think was approximately late 2016, maybe finishing in 2017, there had been a ditch, the ditch was taken out, so more of the flow goes over the road and into Papa instead of through a ditch system that would serve as, anything to deter vehicle or et cetera. So we are the retention pond of that area. Lake Louise and the entire project going on with the bridge and the dam and the road and all of that flows into Papa Lake. Lake Louise's failed septic tanks that I've been reported as continue to get to fail, those are going into our lake. I know that we've had E. coli testing issues on that side of our lake, and we can't keep up with it. My husband has served on a lake committee where we were servicing our own lake. We used Aqueduct, et cetera, and professional advisors in that space. But we can't keep up with the time, and we definitely can't keep up with the cost. And as of last summer, my kids aren't swimming in the lake. I mean, I'm not allowing my kids to swim in the lake, which is why I moved here. The lake is disgusting and demolished. Papa has paid for dam remediation, which was very expensive and through the EPA. The labor hours of our residents cost is through the roof, let alone the cost that our 42 homes and our residents had to pay for. We also paid for our own road reconstruction, which of course erosion and all of the water coming across the road in there had to be split amongst 42 homes, which, we didn't get a penny from South Russell or any other state entity, even though we identified state money that we could use, but South Russell wouldn't partner on it with us for the cost to co-sign with us on that loan. So essentially what I'm asking for Papa is a silt remediation plan. One, to get the silt out first and foremost now, and then to continue to keep the silt out of that. I have a degree in journalism and advertising, so I don't know what that solution is either. I know it's gonna cost thousands of dollars with our engineers, but we need a plan that's repeated silt remediation of some sort. And frankly, I'm not interested in ESID, and I'm not interested in a zero interest loan because Papa and our 42 residents have paid for so many things on our own, and it isn't our water and silt that's coming through our lake, it's the rest of South Brussels.
I think we all have that same situation. We have sediment ponds on Annabrook's property, and there's the ones down, you mentioned we're going through here. And yeah, a solution would be great for that, but unfortunately, the natural flow of water that we don't get a choice of where it goes, that's where it went. Paw Lake decided to put a dam in to make a lake that took away from that. Some of the other ones decided to put a dam in, and the water was naturally running through there. So we can't change that. But to her point, a sediment program in all these ponds might benefit the entire village in helping hold water longer so it goes down slower. We've talked about the Manor Pond in the sediment, but again, it goes back to it's a private pond. There's a perfect example of that is full of sediment. If that could be, cleaned, it could act as a much better retention pond and help slow the water into the new project you did, which would only help it going down there. We have the same problem she's got. We don't have the money to fix it. So it doesn't really affect us. If it's just a flow through pond, it's going down to the project faster. But if we could all team up and do something to alleviate these problems on the private property, which I know makes an issue, it may be a great benefit to the whole overall program that you're doing. There's existing ponds there that aren't working well. If we get those to work better, it could help everybody, but none of them, they got 42, we got 29. And it's too expensive. But if we could work together to fix them, it would help us all a lot. We've got two just on Manabrook that go into both these projects you're talking about that could be a real saver of. We would just put less water into the area that you're trying to help the east side on. Take longer for us to get into it. They might already be drained by the time we get into it if our retention ponds are fine. They might have the same problem or the same help in Lake Louise. But none of the associations, it's too cost effective for some people to do it, and then we kind of, like she said, we feel like we're paying for everybody's part of it. But I would be all for a solution like that, and trying to work with Whitetail and Manor and Paw in, giving access to it, but getting the entire village that it helps with the drainage to, sharing that cost. It benefits everybody, not just the people in Paw.
Joe Pianecki, 71 Paw Lake Drive. So just, I'm listening, it's very complex. I mean, I envy you having to solve this problem with, obviously you don't really have so much money to deal with it. But as Heidi was saying, it seems to me that at some point, and Ruth, maybe you could check, Paw Lake better than anybody, right? I mean,
I'm not allowed to talk about
but what I mean is, at some point, when that lake got put in, okay, none of this other building was around here, right? And that lake was pristine, and it worked, it was fine, it was perfect, for 100 years, it was put in 1920. Now all of a sudden, we're having problems, right? Well, we're having problems because of what? A lot of buildings been going on, and a lot of people, which the village gets what? Property taxes from all that building, right? Which wasn't there before. So now we're the benefactors of all the runoff from all that building going into our lake and our silt pond. And we're the ones, 42 people now, are being looked upon to take care of that. That's not gonna happen. That silt pond, okay, cost us this time around 50 or 60,000 to get.
Between 50 and 60.
50, 60 to get dredged out.
We just
And
spent
that's
200,000 on the
one
road.
silt pond,
Yeah, well,
how many silt ponds are there? 12?
Yeah, I mean, and that,
So-
just coming off of last year spending
So my
200,000
point
on
is-
the road.
My point is that if it costs $50,000 to dredge that silt pond, imagine what it would be to do the lake. $500,000? We don't have it, we're not gonna pay for it, we can't. So that's just gonna become a big mud hole. Now what are you gonna do? You know, so at some point, you're right, we all have to come up with a common solution somewhere, because none of us, you know, as individual, you know, it's easy to say, oh yeah, private property, it's your property. We can't do it, you know, it's not feasible, so.
Yeah, and the end result is they fill up and then it just becomes a faster flow down on the end.
Yeah,
So
it's a big mud hole.
it just pushes the problem somewhere else.
Your name and address, please.
Patrick Francisco, 74 Paw Lake. The one thing I wanted to bring up, which Heidi touched on, but it is part of all this, silt is one issue that we're dealing with. I served on the lake committee, I was our lake chair for a couple of years, part of treating our lake. The situation with the upstream, septic system not being maintained and working, that's becoming, our lake has gotten to the point where we were managing the algae and everything internally. When I was the chair of the lake, we got to the point where we actually had to throw our hands up and be like, we have to bring in Aqueduct because we can't even control the blooms that are happening in our lake anymore because of how much contaminants are running down. And it's like, I mean, I understand where somebody might be like, that's a natural flow of water, but people upstream are sending water into our lake. As Heidi said, it's like, you know, people don't even want to swim in the lake anymore because of, you know, what's coming down, you know, and I think just about every septic system in Paw Paw Lake has been now updated to a new system. So it's not coming from our properties, it's coming from upstream. So the silt is one issue. The other is what's flowing in the water coming into our lake, and that's another issue I'd like to see addressed. Is like, you know, I mean, what's going to happen with that? I mean, the silt, I think, is the south part of our lake is actually, because it got to the point our silt pond got so filled up, the south part of our lake essentially became an extended silt pond, or that the depth of that is now really low. Now, we've taken upon ourselves to now dig out, as you guys have driven by, we're digging out our silt pond. But the reality is we're having to figure out, is 49 homes in the last 18 months, how to come up with the better part of $250,000 to make that happen. You know, that's being born straight on the backs of us, and some of those issues aren't 100%, as I think Joe and Heidi mentioned. I mean, yes, I mean, the flow of water does come that way, but some of the sediment that's coming downstream is happening because of what's happening upstream that wasn't happening prior. So I don't think that it's just, well, hey, that's the natural thing, you guys are catching it all, and, you know, it's yours to deal with.
Right. Because again, the way, this is simple, I'm no engineer, I'm no water expert, I'm none of that stuff. But when that lake got put in 100 years ago, none of this stuff was happening. The village allowed building permits to be built, developments to be put in, and was there any regard given to the fact that this could happen? Maybe not, because they wouldn't have let it happen. And now, you can't say, well, we're gonna take all the tax money and hooray for us, we got all these homes and developments built. Oh, the lake, that's your problem. And we didn't cause this, right? So who's gonna help us? That's the part that because we're not gonna pay for it.
Especially, and again, the silt is one specific thing that we can talk about, you know, remediation program there. The other part that I think definitely needs to be looked at separately is the septic system. Because I mean, I think there's times we could probably have the EPA come in there and take measurements, and they would get involved in being like, something's gotta be done. We can't be pouring this stuff, because it's not just stopping in Paw Paw Lake, right? It's continuing down through Silver Lake too, so to me, it's like, as it comes into there.
Deer Lake, yeah.
Or Deer Lake, sorry. As it comes, but my point is like, that's where I'd like to say, you know, if, that's a totally, in my opinion, that's a totally different issue, because now you're talking about a safety issue with regard to, is the water even safe for our kids to be swimming in and things like that. Silt is one issue, that's a whole different issue.
All right, let's do this. I don't want to keep you here all night. Anybody else that didn't get a chance to speak yet? All right, here's just my quick notes. In our spring newsletter, which will come out before trash day. It'll come out probably end of March or something like that. These are the 5 things that I put down. One was silt remediation. 2 is the easement behind Kensington Green and Central Retention Basin. 3 is to get the Chagrin River Watershed Partners to high flow. 4 is to then a test for the septic systems, to find out the quality of the septic systems. And 5 was to do, and this was something I had meant to do a year or two ago, is to test the water in the village, many different locations. I think what we'll have to do is we're gonna have to hire somebody to do that, whether, just, we may come to your house and say, give us a sample of water, maybe going before going into Pawpaw, or a sample of water coming in to Lake Louise, and what's the quality of the water going out, stuff like that. So we will have something in the newsletter about those 5 things. And then probably what we'll do is have some sort of an update saying, hey, come and spend an hour, this is what we found out. By then, our engineer and the water people from CT really can answer some of our questions also. Sorry, anybody else from council that wanted to speak or have a chance to say anything?
Back in there. I tell people that our number one challenge in South Russell is stormwater runoff. And we heard you loud and clear, and we put together a number of projects, as you know. Now, considering this delicate balance between private and public, I don't know how much we're allowed to do through statute, okay, concerning private and public domains. But I would look at it this way. My wife and I do not have any children in Chagrin Falls schools. But we pay taxes for the school, for the good of the whole, okay? I would like council to look at this and come up with solutions for everyone, no matter if you're private or you're public. You're South Russell, and we're here to serve you, the residents. So keep in mind that that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do the best we can to serve you, no matter if you're public or private. We are looking for solutions.
I want to thank everybody for coming.
Let me add this. I mentioned it's village-wide problem. It's not just the sediment, it's not just the runoff, it's not just the flooding. But from the south end of the village to the eastern end of the village to the in-between of the village, we're all in this together. So when you're talking about your silt pond and your silt pond and your flooding, all of it's hooked together and linked. So to my mind, we've made significant progress, but we need to make more. The Fox Run detention pond would help, but that requires Fox Run people to say, yes, we'll do this. It doesn't help us, but it helps the people downstream. Same with yours. You want help for yours, and he wants help with his. So we all fix it together.
One last request. If you spoke, we try to keep good records, and I didn't do a very good job. If you spoke, maybe put something next to your name so that we can say these people at least spoke tonight. Thank you all for coming. We'll be in touch.
One quick, will you guys do a follow-up to this? I thought this is a very good special meeting, a lot of good stuff and stuff.
I'm Jerry.
Will you do a follow-up?
I think we'll respond to you through the newsletter, probably say that.
Yeah, so you're in charge of the.
We'll have some results.
One of the things I was asked to find out is when will our streets be redone? And that's Countryside, Spring, Anglers. The Spring looks pretty good. The Anglers, okay.
Hey, Mayor, we're still in a meeting, we're still in a meeting, and that's fine, but there's a lot of, can't hear anything.
But it's gonna come.
Still in a meeting.
Okay, so make a motion to adjourn.
No, it's adjourned.
Pardon? All in favor? Aye. You're checking out give you a call. I'll send you an email probably with my music for you. Nothing urgent, but thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
And now you guys do it. I've been told, I'm so exposed to now, this country's gonna go. All the way over here, some house where